welcome everyone. Today we're going to talk about the wonderful joys of septic and sewer systems and potable water. I'd like to introduce you to our two hosts today that are going to be Tracy Horning and Megan McCaskill. They're two of the three partners own this business. Take it away, Tracy and Megan.
Thank you, Maureen. Can you hear me?
Sure can. Can everyone else hear?
Can you see me?
Yeah, I think, let's see, where are you? Usually you can see, but I don't know why. I know we can't see everybody on the screen, and that's probably why. So, but we can hear you anyways. I don't even see you on my, there he is. Megan's got her picture up, just a company picture, but.
It's us, we're together. We're here, we just can't get our video to work.
Okay, weird. Okay, you guys were up, or Tracy, you were.
Yeah, I couldn't get audio on my laptop.
Okay, all that. The joys of Zoom from home.
Yeah.
Well, Megan can probably still work on maybe the video portion if you wanted to start. Anyways, can you see your screen at all?
Yeah, I can see.
Okay, perfect. So you just tell me as we're going, and I'll move the screen for you.
Okay, so we're going to talk about water testing, drilled well testing, septic inspections, and city sewer lateral inspections. I don't know how many people are familiar with those, but it's something that's highly recommended for your buyers. And we're going to also talk about when you're on the selling side of things and what you need to do to prepare. So I guess the first thing we're going to talk about is setting expectations, I guess, setting homeowners' expectations on what they're getting when they need an inspection done. So the reason why we do these inspections is to, one, make sure that their water's potable and they can drink it. We all want to know, can we drink our water? Is it safe to drink? The water tests are taken from the kitchen tap. So it's after it's gone through any treatment. The reason why we do this is because it's typically for a lender, your lending institution, right? They want to make sure it's potable. We do offer water testing where we can do the raw as well, in case the homeowners want to know what is in their well right from the well itself. We do well quantity testing on drilled wells. The reason for this is we want to make sure that the family that's moving in will have enough water for their day-to-day usage. Typically our tests are good for a family of 2 to 4. This can be very important, especially for people that are not used to a well and not used to how a well operates. You may have a well, but it's not endless water. So we want to make sure that they're going to have enough for their day-to-day usage. We also do septic inspections. That's a big one. I always recommend those, highly recommend those. If money comes down to, they don't have enough money for these inspections, I always choose septic over well, just because if you can't flush your toilet, you're not using the water anyway in your well, and it is more expensive to fix. So with a septic inspection, we want to make sure that there is a field that's in working order. They're not going to have any backups or any blowouts once they move in. And sewer lateral scopes are basically just checking to make sure that there's no problems from the house to the city sewer. Checking to see if they have a backflow preventer, that there's none of the old tar pipe, no roots, especially in older Halifax area where root penetration is a big thing. So these are the types of inspections that we offer. Okay, Maureen, if you want to go to the next screen there.
I'm at the end. Where are we going now? You're going to go back and talk about
water testing.
Water testing.
Okay, I don't know where
No,
you
well
had.
recoveries.
Oh, sorry, well recoveries. My assistant.
Sorry.
So this one?
Should say well flow recovery test.
Yes.
With the little well cap.
Yep.
Okay, so the goal of a recovery test is, like I said, to see if there's going to be enough water for a family of 2 to 4 when they move in. Are they going to run out of water when they move in constantly? Are they going to be able to water their lawn, let's say wash cars, fill up a pool. So we start by, when we get there, we take off the well cap and we check to see the static depth. That's where the water sits in the well. Where does it naturally sit? Once we get our static depth, we draw it down for 1 hour, and we would like it to last an hour. Sometimes they don't. So we go until 1 hour or until it runs dry. Once the hour's up, or if the well runs dry, we start measuring it as it comes up. We watch it as it comes in, we stick a meter on the well cap, and we take measurements. After 30 minutes, we do a calculation to see how much it's actually producing. Every well has a different requirement. It goes based upon the depth of the well. So wells at 50 feet need 4 gallons a minute recovery rate because they do not have that big reservoir, versus a well, let's say that's 300 feet that only needs a 1/4 gallon a minute because it has such a huge reservoir. So we do these on drilled wells. We do not do these on dug wells. Sometimes we do come across buried drilled wells in the older homes, probably pre-1999. They used to bury wells when they drilled them. So sometimes homeowners cannot locate those. So there is a different type of test for those types of wells. They're called a flow test. Things we cannot tell with a flow test are, one, where's the well recovered, or where's the well located, the depth of the well, and the actual recovery rate of the well. But we can still test it. The flow test's goal is basically to run the tap at a high rate of 4 to 4.4 gallons a minute for 1 hour. If it makes it the 1 hour, we come back 24 hours later and repeat the process. Now, if during the flow test, it runs dry either day, that's not a good sign. And they do have to get somebody in to look at it and actually locate that well and take off the cap and see what's going on. It should be able to make that 1 hour. Any questions on that?
Yes, I have a question on that.
Sure.
I'm dealing with the sale of an older home in the rural community.
Right.
And when the well company ran the water for 1 hour,
Mhm.
the pump overheated and shut off.
It
And the
shouldn't.
homeowner, the seller, was very upset because he said that's a brand new pump that I
Mhm.
paid $500 or $600 for 2 or 3 months ago,
Mhm.
and they're going to burn it out. So he was very upset, and I thought, well, how are we supposed to do a Q&Q?
Right. So pumps are actually designed to be able to run with water in them. That's what keeps them cooling down. So as long as there's water running through that pump, it shouldn't burn out. Now I'm wondering if they ran the well dry and didn't shut that pump off, and that's what caused the burnout. Because once water stops running through that pump, then things start to overheat and it burns out.
See, it causes a problem. Like the homeowner gets very perturbed, and
No.
your sale is down the tubes, and like it causes a whole bunch of problems. But what he said he could do is get the statement from the well company showing how deep the well was drilled, because it was
Mhm.
only done like in the past number of years. And
Mhm.
it can show the it'll show the Q&Q on their report. Would that be good enough for a buyer, I wonder, or you have to have something recent?
It all depends upon the buyer's preference or what they're okay with. I have had clients say, okay, within the last 5 years, I'm okay with this data. I have seen well logs change or wells change. I had one where it was drilled and 2 months later, they needed to hydrofrack it. Wells can change. Unfortunately, we can't see what's going on below the surface. So it really all depends upon the buyer and if they're okay with that.
And the other
Most aren't.
that I ran into as well this year was a neighbor had drilled a well next to my client's property probably a few years ago. My clients never ever had any problems with their water quantity. But when the test was done, when they were selling their home, they failed it and found out that the neighbor a few years ago had ended up not knowing, tapped into the vein that supplied their water as well. So they had never run out and had a family of 4 teenagers. They showered, but it still wasn't showing as a passable water amount.
And
May
that
I add something too?
absolutely can happen.
What was that question?
Yeah, I just wondered if I could add something in there too. I've done a bit of electrical work over the years, and one thing with that well pump there with it overheating, I just was curious whether it overheated and had a breaker in the actual pump or whether it was blowing the breaker in the house. Because if it was the breaker in the house, it's possible that the power supply, the wiring to the pump may not have been adequate, and it might just be blowing breakers in there, and it could be an electrical issue, not the actual pump.
Right, exactly.
Well, the homeowner, when I told him what happened, he went to the house and he checked. And by that time, the well had recovered and the pump was fine. It didn't burn out. But he said, don't, like that sale fell apart anyway. But he said, the next time, let me know. And he said, they're not doing any Q and Q. He said, I'll get the report from the well company and they can use that. Or he said, I want to be there when the well company come. So the pump was okay that time. It recovered.
Right. As long as whoever's doing the testing is aware to shut off the pump if it runs dry and is certified to do the testing, there shouldn't be any issues on the test. But we have had homeowners on site with us when we're doing the testing so they can see what is going on. I know wells is one of those things where homeowners
Good.
do get very
Okay.
stressed out about with their pumps because they are expensive.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So I've probably cut you off track now, do we?
No, that's okay. So preparation for homeowners, when you have somebody coming in to do a well test, you're the seller, not the buyer. There is some prep work that we do ask for. We ask that if they can determine if the well head is above or below grade. This is important because it helps us determine, is this going to be a recovery test or a flow test? We need to be able to allot that time because a flow test is 2 days. A recovery test, we just do while we're there on site. We do ask homeowners to remove well cap bolts. If they are able to, we will remove them, but the reason why we have been asking them to do it is winter. Those caps are getting frozen and they do risk cracking. And we do not want to break the homeowner's cap. We also will cut bolts from time to time, and we don't always have replacement bolts on us. They're only a couple of dollars to replace, but it can make a homeowner upset. So we do ask them to remove the bolt caps, or at least be aware that when we come to do a well test, if we cannot remove the well cap bolts, we may have to cut them. We ask them to clear out any areas that we need to get into around their pressure tank, water treatment, all that sort of thing. So we're not digging through their stuff and moving it other way. So it's easy to access. We also kind of like them to know where the well is. Sometimes we're out hunting for a well and it's below a bunch of bushes and everybody's walking around the yard, cannot find this well. If they have service or repair documents, even those well logs, like you have mentioned, those are great to have before we come in so we know what we're dealing with. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about water testing. Anybody who's done rural areas that are on well should be pretty familiar with water testing. Not everybody gets a water test. It all depends on if they need it for their lending institution or not. But again, highly recommend because it tells us if your water is potable. So we take it at the kitchen tap. We can do a raw sample for the client if they wish to know the raw and the treated, but it is a cost of 2 separate tests from the lab. Now the lab offers a couple of different packages. The most popular one is the real estate package. It offers the bacteria and all your metals. And then there's a full analysis. Some people really want to know the whole Cadillac of what's in their water. It'll cover all the standard like all the minerals, the metals, and the bacteria. All depends on what they want to pay for. Now, the lab does offer a couple of turnaround times. So they do offer crunch tests, which is in 2 days. You can have the results back. And it's 2 days from the time that we drop it off at the lab. So if we take it at 3 o'clock on Wednesday, it's not going to go in until Thursday morning because we've missed the cutoff time. So you wouldn't have it back until the Monday. So they count business days. They also offer a 5 to 7 day turnaround on those tests. If you're not in a hurry, it does save the client about $90. The lab, you may have been aware before Christmas, it was a nightmare. Now the lab does offer these turnaround times, but they do not guarantee them, unfortunately. So sometimes these times do get pushed out a little bit because they've had equipment issues or just an influx of testing, but they do try to keep to the 2 day or the 5 to 7 business days. And when those water test results come in, we review them for you and we'll highlight what the issues are, what needs to be treated. Is it an aesthetic issue, which is not harmful to the buyer? It's more just, let's say it's iron. It can cause staining. And then there's the more drinking health concern, water impurities such as arsenic and bacteria. We will point those out to you because those tests can be a little difficult to read. So when you get a report from us, when it comes from the lab, we've already interpreted it for you and sent it to you and the client to let you know what the issues are. Now, so water test preparation. We want to make sure that there's running water. Seems kind of silly, but we're dealing with a lot of vacant properties and the water's not turned on. So we need to make sure that there is running water in the property. Ideally, we'd like to have the sink cleaned out of all dishes. We've come in a lot of times where there's sinks full of dishes and it's hard to take a very sterile sample when you're dealing with sink full of dishes that's kind of in your way. Let the agent know if you're testing for, or if you're treating for any sort of impurities, like your water treatment documents. It'll tell us, are you treating for arsenic, bacteria, uranium, manganese? It's nice to know those things so we know what's in the water treatment, because looking at those two pieces of equipment in the picture there, we cannot really tell you what they're treating. You'd have to rip those apart and analyze the media that's inside. Providing service repair documents, making sure that it's been serviced. If it hasn't been serviced for a couple of years, you may want to have it serviced before your water testing, because otherwise it's going to come back possibly with a fail and you're going to have to do that anyways and get an extension and retest. Any questions on water testing?
Actually, I do have one question regarding water testing.
Sure.
When something is brought to the attention, so say, it's just a standard well, they have like the salt that they can add, and that's pretty much it. But as a result of the test, it shows potentially like arsenic or things that, require a UV light or, that have other things going on that are correctable. What would be the suggested course of action to help our buyers kind of seek that reparation, or say, hey, listen, we're still interested. However, it's going to cost X amount of dollars to put this solution in. Where do we go?
Well, I would start by getting a quote from a water treatment company. Depending on where you are, we can give you names of reliable companies that we work with that we recommend for those areas. Now, it typically, and I could be wrong on this, Maureen may be able to answer this for me, but typically when there's a water issue, typically the seller is the one that corrects it because they have to provide potable water. I know, and I'll use my house for an example. I knew for my house when I bought it, I have a dug well, it had bacteria, the sellers refused to fix it, they shocked the well. I accepted that. And when I moved in, I put in a more permanent solution, a UV light. So maybe when it comes to arsenic or uranium, maybe the seller only wants to put in a reverse osmosis unit because that's potable water, but maybe the buyer's okay with later on down the road putting in a whole house system to treat every tap.
Okay.
I guess it kind of comes down to money and who can afford what to put in. I've also heard of sellers that or buyers that have paid for the water treatment knowing they were buying the house. It's unfortunately comes down to money,
Money fixes everything.
right?
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so we're going to talk about septics. It's a smelly job. Let's see, a goal of a septic inspection. We want to make sure that the septic is in working order. Is it, a straight pipe to a ditch? We see a lot of those in the less populated areas. Is there a filter? Is the tank leaking? Are the baffles intact? Can it drain? Does it back up? Does dye come out? Those are the sort of things we want to check with a septic inspection. So our inspections start with, we check the tank when we take off the covers. Are the baffles intact? If they're falling off, we make a recommendation to put a filter in. Is the tank levels low? So this is why we don't like to see it pumped before we come, because we want to see, is it up to operating levels? If there's a tank that hasn't been pumped and it's about a foot below operating levels, that's a good sign that it's leaking. So we do not ask to have that pumped. Believe it or not, we do like to see it full. After we have done the tank peek in, we stick our camera out to the field. And what we're looking for when we do a video inspection is we're looking for, does it have, like I said, a pipe to a ditch? Is there perforated pipe to show us that we're in a field? Are there roots? Is there sludge buildup in the field? Is there blockages? Is there already water out in that field before we stick water into the field? After we've done our scope and we've mapped out the field for the homeowner or for the buyer, we bring it back to the T typically, and we start loading in water and dye. We do about a tub's worth of water. We do about 60 gallons. We have a meter, we monitor it. We don't want to oversaturate the field, but we want to put in a good amount to make sure, is the client going to be able to do a load of laundry and is it going to back up? So while we're adding the water to the field, we're monitoring it. Is it backing up? Does it drain? Is dye coming up? The dye that we've added, we'll walk around. Does it seem to be coming out into a ditch? So those are the type of things we look for when we do a field test. If everything's good, we will go back and scope the line from the house to the tank or the tank back to the house. The things we look for with that test is there a disconnect? Is there a sag? Believe it or not, a sag can cause a problem when it's coming from the tank to the house or the house to the tank, because it can create a blockage. Stuff stalls out in that water, and over time, it can cause a blockage in the backup. We check to see, is there crushed pipe, the stuff passing through it, those sort of things. Other things we check.
Sorry, Tracy, I was just thinking maybe to explain what a sag is.
Yeah. Oh, it's a dip in the pipe. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm just thinking if somebody knew, they may not.
Yeah, it's a sag is when the pipe takes a belly in the pipe, and it makes like a U in the pipe and water sits in it. Sometimes it's just a little bit. If it's just a little bit and our camera can see over it, it's not a big deal. But if we go completely over, that is a big deal. That's a big dip in the pipe, and it just needs to be propped back up, dirt put under it, and put that slope back into the pipe. And it's pretty common. We see that probably in about 75% of homes.
So with regards to the camera and
Yep.
getting down into in through the tank and out to the field and up to the house to see everything, my understanding is that different septic systems could use different diameters of pipe, which could make it prohibitive for some cameras to get down where it needs to get down, or there's a bend, or there's something that keeps you from getting that visibility.
There are sometimes, yeah.
I was just wondering, how often does that happen? Because I feel like some of my more rural inspections, I'm running into it more frequently than I ever thought I would, where people just can't get to the field and they can't see if there's an issue, but it doesn't appear to be an issue based on the other things that you've just talked about filling the tub and seeing where the dye goes and all of that.
Mhm.
But
So
running into some challenges there.
there is, we've had ones where whoever installed it put in many turns before you get to the field. And the camera can only make it around so many turns. And by the time it gets to that T where the field starts, it doesn't want to make that. We try to at least get a visual down that pipe, even if we cannot get completely down it. We like to have our camera pointing down that pipe so that as we're adding water, we can see, is it draining through the perforations? Is it backing up, that sort of thing? Typically, if you can't make it down to the field, you'd like to at least make it towards the T so that when you're adding the water, you can see if it backs up. Unfortunately, though, you're right, you can't always make it down the field. And there is another type of system where you cannot scope the field, such as a pump up system, those raised systems that look like mounds in the yard. Yeah. You can't scope those, they're under pressure. So they unfortunately rely on a load test and dye test. But that being said, they're very easy to spot a problem before we even do the load test and dye test, because you'll usually see a blowout somewhere under on those before you even add the dye, just where it's under pressure. So for preparation for septic inspections, you want to make sure that the homeowner, the seller, has the covers exposed. You want the inlet and the outlet side of the tanks exposed. So what that means, when your homeowner is preparing for these, we do send along a PDF with instructions when you book us that shows you what we need, a visual for the homeowner so they can see what they're looking for. When in doubt, all they have to do is lift those covers and see if they can see a pipe, like in the picture under septic inspection preparation. You'll see like a pipe there. If they see a pipe leaving, we know we can get to the field. We ask that they expose or locate a clean out. Not the end of the world if they do have the tank fully exposed. Some people do not know where they are, but we would like to see it if we can. Again, we do not want them to pump that septic. We do like to see it full, believe it or not, and provide the reports for, have they had it pumped, like the last time they had it pumped? Have they had any septic work done? We show up a lot of times and they're like, oh, this person says they had this pipe replaced. What do you think that was for? Unfortunately, we can't tell you from 5 years ago. We can just see that it's been replaced. So those are the sort of things we like to see if the homeowners have their records. Any questions on septics? So city sewer lateral scopes. The goal of a city sewer lateral scope, we want to make sure that the line is good from the house to the city. Because if there's a problem on the seller's property, they have to fix it. If it's on the city side of the property, the city takes care of it. When we go out, we scope out through a clean out. If a clean out cannot be exposed or accessible, we do ask that the homeowner remove a toilet and we can scope through that. We're going to look for the type of pipe that is used, roots, if there's any blockages, dips in the pipe again, those sags, the bellies that the pipe takes. And we check to see if there's a backflow preventer. Now, preparation for sellers, when they have somebody coming in to scope their sewer lateral, we do ask them to locate a clean out pipe, make it accessible for us. So if it's in a closet, if they could remove, if it's boxes, Christmas stuff out of the way so that we can locate it easily, that would be much appreciated. If there was any sort of repair records that they've had done or routering done to the sewer lateral, that would be great to see as well. If a city sewer lateral cleanout pipe cannot be exposed, we do ask that they remove a toilet.
What does a backflow preventer look like?
It'll look like a cleanout cap sometimes. There's a couple of different types, but it'll look like a cleanout pipe cap there on, I don't know if you can see it on the screen there where it
Yep.
says city sewer lateral preparation. And sometimes it'll have a bar. Like when you take it off, there'll be a bar underneath, a flapper, which will stop stuff from coming back in. Sometimes they're bigger. Sometimes they're like 6 inches versus the standard 4-inch. I've seen a couple of other ones recently that had plastic pieces underneath of them. They didn't have a flapper. It's new to me. I haven't seen them before.
They're in the Truro area.
Yeah, they were in the Truro area. But you won't see them on the outside.
Okay.
And then in the old buildings, the old cast buildings, they just look like a 6-inch cast cover. And they have bolts in them.
Now,
Awesome. Thank you.
they're building code now, aren't they? So if you do an inspection, you find there isn't one there. Is it mandatory that we have them put in?
We recommend them to be put in.
Insurance company.
Yeah, your insurance company is going to want them. They are code, but we're finding places that do not have them.
Yeah.
They're pretty easy to install too, once they're not expensive.
That's good, thanks.
No problem. Okay,
Have any more questions?
I think that's it.
Leave it. Oh my gosh, you're getting away easy.
Perfect. If anybody has any questions or would like to see any of our packages, feel free to email us or call us or text us. Maureen also has our email address. She knows how to get a hold of us and we can send those to you.
Can I ask another question, please?
Sure.
Okay. I know there's some engineers in Nova Scotia that come up with this new, I don't know what it's called.
Sloping
Black
sand
roof.
filter?
A what?
Sloping sand filter?
I don't know if that's what it's called. It goes at the end of your holding tank. And every time you flush the toilet, it overflows and goes into the system that they've built and holds it there until it gets to a certain volume. And then it opens up and it's like a tidal wave going out into your septic field.
Oh, Bell
Yeah.
siphon.
What's it called?
Bell siphon.
Those are the
That
old
might be it.
ones.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
they
old.
used to use those and up until probably mid 80s, maybe early 90s. Kind of
But these
sounds,
are these are outside of the holding tank.
it sounds like a pump up system almost.
It's a manual mechanism.
Mhm.
An engineer was giving a talk one day and said he and his buddy had invented these things and they're installing around Nova Scotia. So what they were saying was that sometimes when you get those septic fields and throw it away from the house and there's finger
Mhm.
joints in that,
Mhm.
one flush won't push all the fluid back to the end of your field.
Right, that
So
sounds
what
like a dosing box.
Okay. So is that something that you're going to see in your inspection as well, or is that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we have come across them. I've probably seen maybe a dozen or so. They're not as common, but they kind of work like a Bell siphon, Maureen.
Okay.
So they go out from the outflow of your tank. The liquid goes over to another box or chamber, and when that fills up to a certain level, this box fills up and goes
Closes.
down, and water flows out to the field. So it's not It's not when you flush the toilet, water goes out like a gravity feed system. It
Yeah,
stores it and sends it out all at once. That way your field kind of has a break in between to drain versus always continuously feeding out when you flush a toilet. And typically
Yeah.
twice a day.
Can I just add something, especially for the newer agents? I just find the importance of that you actually read the water tests. You get a lot of agents that do their own tests. You get a lot of companies that won't tell us. They give us a guide to go by. Oh, just look on the site and you can figure it out. But we're not water experts. And one of the number one lawsuits, or the two, are water flow and water testing.
Mhm.
So if you don't want to risk yourself being in court, I would suggest going to a professional that's going to read your results. I think it's so important. And a question for you is, how far do you go outside the city? Because now we're getting so many buyers and we're all traveling too far as I'm concerned, but we are because the deals are hard in the city. So how
Right.
far do you go?
We are finding that ourselves. This time of year, we can typically go within an hour and a half of the city, 2 hours of where we live. We're in Porter's Lake.
Yep.
Typically. Now, when it comes to peak season in the summer, it's very hard to get to those areas because most of our stuff is in the Hammonds Plains, Fall River, those sort of areas. So we do scale back come June, July, August. But right now we are going to about an hour and a half to 2 hours from where we live.
It's time for you to move. I
I
know a good
You guys
agent.
saw my house?
Do you know a realtor?
Yeah. Well, I'll help.
Megan.
We'll split it 18 ways.
Sure.
No. Those are my girls. I'm peeing all over them like a dog.
There you go.
They're
You
not
sure?
going anywhere.
No,
No, that's all good. No.
perfect.
And if you guys have a topic that you come across that you would like to know more, you can always let Maureen know. We could customize a presentation that answers specific questions or anything you'd like to know or anything. We can help.
All right. No one else has any more questions? Well, wow. All right.
Quite a bunch.
Well, they gave us some great information and walked us through the steps, which is great. Hopefully it helped anyone that's newer to the septic inspection process and maybe feel a little bit better about it. And it might be just a refresher for the rest of us, but
Yep.
It's good because I haven't had to be out in the field for a while doing any kind of a septic inspection.
Anything, yeah.
I don't want to lose. I don't want to lose what I always had retained. So it's great to hear it again. And you know,
For sure.
and a big part of it is definitely the preparation and making sure that that seller is prepared for your buyer's inspector to come in and be able to do it so that they're not trying to come back and possibly having to charge a second visit because the preparations weren't done. There are some inspection companies out there that would do that if they have to come back, if they can't finish it. So
And if you ever know that we're coming to your property and you're the selling side, you can get your client or you can send us pictures of the tank to see if it's what we need. Don't hesitate to do that, but we do prefer to see it with the covers off because sometimes people will send us a picture of 2 covers and I can't tell if that's an inlet, a center, or a center and an outlet. So if you can remove the covers and get them to send us a picture, blow me up as much as you want. I'd rather do that than make a second trip.
As
Because
well, are you seeing pre-inspections at all? Like, if we
Not
have a
right
seller-
now.
Yeah,
Not right now. We were there last summer. We were seeing a lot of pre-inspections. This year, we are not seeing them as much.
yeah, because they're a good idea in this this age of buyers waiving inspections.
Yes.
It's good to know that your septic is in good working order when you sell it. You know, you don't want anybody coming back at you later saying, we didn't inspect, but you should have told us your septic failed, you know, that could happen, you know.
Actually,
I'm
I
a
have one
risk
question.
management person, if anybody can tell. I'm all about, okay, let's not have anything go wrong.
And neighbors do talk. They will find out.
That's right.
We've
Yes.
If you-
had that happen.
definitely. There was another
Just,
question there.
Yeah, I just had a thought come up. So you go to list a house and the seller says, well, I have no idea where the septic is. I just bought it last year. I've never had it pumped. There's a beautiful green yard out the back. It's there. Then what do you do?
Well, they can hire people like us to locate the tank for them. We can do that. Sometimes people will just go out with a prodder and start poking the ground where they think it is. And listening, do they hear plastic covers? Do they hear concrete when they're doing that? I've gone to where it looks like a gopher's been through the yard and they've got a bunch of holes dug. But if they really don't know where it is, they can hire a company like us and we can go through the Cleanout and locate it for them.
The scarier part is of that statement when he asked that question was, I just bought the house last year, which means he didn't inspect it either.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Or you see somebody's got strawberries planted on that nice green area and they say, gee, stuff grows well there.
Rhubarb, rhubarb, and they were eating it.
Oh.
Lovely.
Oh. Waste the